Able to hear me? Good afternoon. Yeah. So just we'll wait for some time. Okay. All right then. Then let me share my screen. So I'm sharing my screen. See, I'm sharing my screen. Just okay. Now you see. Okay, let me remove this test code. See, currently, yesterday's example, we have written a client program, and client program and client program calls, okay, student service calls student DAO, okay, and student DAO calls the student database, the table, the database, it will call the table. Now it will give back the response, right? This is the response. Now we have written this program, we have written for one method. What is that method? Get all students. So my client program is calling get all students. How many students are there in my database? In the student table, all the tables, all the data will be retrieved here. get all students, and this will retrieve your students table. How many records are there? Now we are going to write the unit test case for this. So we'll be writing JUnit and Mockito. JUnit along with Mockito. We are going to write the unit test case. Okay. How we are going to write? We are going to write the test case for the service class and also DAO class. Now you see, for DAO class, this is interacting with the database, right? Okay. So for student service, I can actually create a original object, real object of student service, and call the method get all students. Okay, I can create a real object of student service and call the method get all students. Okay. But I mean, this is how in the unit test case. In the unit test case, we have to test this method and test this DAO layer method. Now, for student DAO, assume that if I want to create a real object, of student DAO. So if you create a real object of student DAO and call the method, so what will happen? Call the method get all students. What will happen? This method will get called, and the logic that is present inside the method, which is connected to the database, all that will happen. Okay. The logic that is connected to the database and all that will happen. But we want to avoid this. That is the reason, right? We want to avoid calling the classes, calling the real objects or real object methods that are connecting to the databases. So this is fine. We can create a real object of student service and call. This is fine, because this service, if you take, this is not interacting with any database, but this is interacting with the database. Here you can call real object, no harm. Real object of student service and call method get all students. What it will call? It will internally call this method. But that means, see how it is being called. If you see here, how it is being called. If I take, this is my student service. And student service is taking the student DAO object and from student DAO object it is calling. Okay, so student DAO, it is calling get all students method. Get all students method. Okay, if you see this code here, from student DAO, we are in the service class, we are calling this method. Now, if you take the client program, client program. This is calling the student service. Okay. Now you see, and how student DAO is passed in the student service constructor. In the constructor, this is taking student DAO, and from student DAO, I'm calling the get all students. Right? Fine then. Now, say I'm writing now test class. Unit test. What I'm going to write in the unit test code. So I want to test now. You see. In student service, this is the method. This is the method. In student service, this is the method. This method is internally using this object and calling this method, right? Now I want to write unit test code to test this method. I want to write unit test code to test get all students method in student service. And even I also, okay, even I want to test get all students method, in student DAO. In student DAO. I want to test this method. I want to test this method. Even I want to test this method also. So because I want to test this service class is working fine, this DAO class is also working fine. So unit test should cover both your service class and DAO class. But when you test a DAO class, you should be careful. When DAO class is tested, okay, use mock object of DAO class. Okay, but for service class, we can use real object of service class. Why means because for DAO class, why we should use mock object? Because this is connecting to the database directly. And suppose if you work with the real object, okay, this is fine for read operation. But what happens if we are testing for create method, create or delete method? Suppose assume that this class student DAO class has some more methods other than get all students. It has some create student method, delete student method, like that. Now, suppose if you assume that you are working with the real object. Real object means this method will get called. Suppose there is a method called create method. So we'll see whether create method is working properly in the student DAO class or not. Suppose we are working with the real object of student DAO. What will happen now? This create method will be called real method, and that has a logic to insert the data in the database. That means in your database, you will create some test records. See, whenever you are doing unit testing, means you will pass test data only, right? Which is not recommended to store the test data. Similarly, whenever you are testing the delete operation in the student DAO class, and when you work with the real object, what will happen? Now this real method delete will delete the data, which is wrong, right? So that is the reason we should avoid actually calling the real object of this class using the real object so that we can avoid this DB calls. And that is the reason we have the framework like Mockito. We'll use Mockito We'll use mockito to create the mock object of the DAO class. Okay. So this is mock object of DAO class. Now, but for service class, we can use real object of the service class. That is correct, right? This service class is not directly interacting with the database. There is no database interaction. So we can use the real object of service class. So how we can do is from the test code, from the unit test code, we can create real object of service class and pass mock object of student DAO class This is how we can work. See, like this it will happen. Now, let's assume that I have a unit test code. I'm writing a unit test code. This is my unit test code. Okay, this is my unit test code. In this unit test code, I want to test the service class and DAO class. What I'll do? So what I'll do is I will create mock object of DAO class. Create mock object of DAO class. Next, create real object of service class. Real object of service class. So what is service class? Student service class. Okay, create real object of service class. Now, what we do is now pass mock object of DAO class to student. See, I'll do like this. Student class constructor. See, this is all right. You see the steps. This create mock object of DAO class, not the real object. Okay. So whenever you create mock object, some mock object will be created. Okay. This is your DAO class. Okay. Now this is your mock object. That means not a real object. Mock object, not a real object. Okay, you can imagine like this. Now, what we are doing, if you take our student service class, this is taking a constructor. The student service class, if you take this constructor, right? Now, pass this mock object to the constructor of student service class. And whenever you pass, so create real object of student service class. Create real object. That means whenever constructor is called, whenever a class constructor is called, the real object is created, right? The real object is created. So when a class object gets created, when the constructor is called, right? When the constructor of the class is called. And in the service class constructor, it is taking DAO object, but this is not real object. This is mock object. So that means your student service is a real object. It is a real object. It is a real object. Taking student DAO. Taking student DAO as mock object. Okay. Student DAO mock object. So this is how you have to work in the real time. You have to work in the real time. Why for service real object? Because service is not interacting directly with the database. Service class is not interacting, but DAO is interacting with the database. That's why we should have mock object. We should avoid calling the real database operations. Okay, student service will be your real object and student DAO will be your mock object. So you should remember. So any class or any component that interacts with the database operations, okay, that you have to deal with the mock object. Okay, that you have to deal with the mock object. Okay, we'll see how we will create now this. Okay, we'll see how we can create now this. Now you see. See, one way is we can do like this. One way is we can do like this. I can create like this: student DAO, equal to mock of student DAO dot class. Okay, student DAO equal to mock of student DAO, just like how I created like this. Not this one, the other one. Mockito dot mock of this, like this, right? Mockito dot mock of this. That means this will be mock object, right? This is the mock object. Mock object of DAO. Mock object of DAO class. Right? Now I can also, now I'll create the real object, student service. Student service is equal to new student service of student DAO. Now you see, whatever I'm creating the new, this is the real object. We are calling the constructor. This is calling the constructor. New operator is calling constructor. There is a real object. But passing, but this is taking the mock object. This is taking the mock object. So student service will be real object. Student service will be real object. Okay, this will be real object, but this will be mock object. So this will be your mock object. So this will be your mock object. Okay. So this will be your mock object. So in that way, this is one way we can do. This is one way we can do. Okay. So student DAO will be mock object. I'm creating the real object student, passing the mock object. I can do like this. Now, fine then. The other way I can do is, I'll show you. Let me start writing the test code. So what I'll do is in my test code, I will remove all this. So I'll say student test. I'll remove all this. I'll remove this. And here what I'll do is I'll write @test public void. What method I'm testing? Test this method I'll test. Get all students. Test get all students. Okay, I'll say like this. Okay, I have to add in the form.xml these dependencies, right? I have to add these dependencies. Let me update this project. Okay, this is part of your test case. Okay. Now what we can do is now you see. Till now we have seen like creating the mock objects like this. Mockito.mock. Till now we have seen like this. Okay. We can also just one. We can also do like this also. We can create two annotations. @mock, @mock, student service, students, student DAO, and inject mocks, student service, student service. We can do like this. Okay. For that in form.xml, what we have to add is we have to add few more dependencies here. One is JUnit Jupyter API. This is one dependency. And another dependency also we have to add. Okay, I'll share this code to everyone. And we also have to add dependencies like org.mockito. Three dependencies we have to add. Mockito -4, 2.19.0, next we can also have Mockito JUnit Jupyter. Mockito JUnit Jupyter. So these three dependencies we should add. Okay, we should add these three dependencies. Now let me go to your test code. Now you see this mock and inject mocks are part of this package. After adding the dependencies we got. Now what this will do, you know what this will do? This is as equal to this code actually. So this code is equal to this code. This code So this code, whatever I'm doing, see here what it is doing, creating the mock object, right? And then this mock object is passed to the constructor of the service class, which is a real object. Whatever this code is doing, the same way this code also will do. So but instead of writing like this, we can write like this in a simple way, just with annotations. Just with annotations we can. So what do you mean by this means? This mock, when I use annotation mock, this object, student DAO mock object gets created. That means student DAO mock object gets created. Okay. Now, when I say inject mocks, student service real object gets created. Injecting the mock object. Inject mocks means the mock objects. How many mocks injecting the mock objects present? If you see here in this piece of code, what are the different mock objects? This is one mock object, right? So this object gets injected here. That is what this inject mocks does. So you can think like this. This part of the code is equal to this part of the code. Same. But only thing is, instead of writing like this, we can simplify like this. Okay? You can simplify. So what inject mocks will do? Inject mocks is like an auto wiring where this mock object gets injected. It is like auto wiring. So this inject mocks means the mock objects get injected. The mock object gets injected. Injected means passed to the real object. What is your real object here? What is your real object? Your student service is a real object. What is your mock object here? The student DAO is mock object. So this gets injected here. See, inject mocks you will be placing. You can think like this. Inject mocks annotation will be placing on the class where the real object is created. The mock object will be placing on where the mock object is created. You can think like that. So this annotation mock is placed. Annotation mock is placed on the object, or we can say on the variable where mock object is created. Okay, annotation inject mock is placed where mock object is passed to real object. Is placed where real object is placed on the variable where real object is created, taking mock object. Is created, injected with mock object. So this is how we have to take. Okay. Now your student service will be real object. Okay. Now one more thing we have to do is, now you see. Now in my test case, what I do is, now you see. In my test case, what I do, I'll say student service dot get all students, and I'll say list students is equal to get all students. And I'm just telling system dot out dot println of students dot size. I'm just doing like this. Okay. So just for time, I'm just testing this. Okay. Let me properties, Java build path. I'll remove this 1.5. I'll use JDK 17. Next Java compiler, JDK 17, apply, yes, apply and close, run as JUnit test. Now you see, I got a null pointer exception. Why? Because student service is null. So see here, whenever we are doing this, we have to initialize these objects. So for that, we have to write a method here before each. I told you, right? Before each, what it does, this will get executed before every test case. So what I'll do, I'll say public void setup, and here I'll say Mockito annotation dot init mocks of this. So what it will do is this will initialize all these mock objects, all these mock object, inject mocks of everything. Okay. So this will initialize the objects. Now let me run this test case. Now you see I got now 0. Why I got 0? So if you say I got 0, system dot student size, because see this is calling the real student service. This is calling the student service is the real object. Is a real object. So this will call the real method. Real get all students method. Okay, now you'll go here. It will go to this method. You can just print this system dot out dot println in student service class. Let me print here also. System dot out dot println in student DAO class. Okay. Now let me run this. Now you see, student service is a real object. This will call real get all student method. So if I go here, so this is printing this. This is printing. That means this is calling the real method. But it is not printing. It is not printing this. It is not printing. You are not seeing this. Because why? Because why? Because this DAO is a mock object. This is not a real object. See, student service is a real object taking the student DAO mock object, and mock object, this will not call the real method. So that's why it is not printing. And this list is an empty list. Since it is not calling this DAO class, this is returning the empty list, and you are getting the size as 0. So if you see here carefully, what is happening here? What is happening here? You see? What is happening? You see here. So now if I go to your student service, let me take this. Okay. So this is your Next, this is calling student DA. This is calling student DA. Okay, this is calling student. Now you see. Now, when I do like this in the test case, what do you mean by this? I told you. This will be the real object and this will be mock object. So mock object is injected here. That's why it is inject box. So this is the real object. And this will be the mock object. Now when in my test method, I call student service dot get all student. That means student service is a real object. And when I call get all students, it will call the real method. That means this method will be called real. That means this is your real method. And this is also printing. See the first line, it is printing. How we know this method got executed? This is printing the first line. See, this is printing the first line. But this service, this is taking mock object. This is actually mock object. This is mock object. Student DAO is a mock object. Now, when I say student DAO dot get all students, for mock object will not call this. There is no real. This is only the real method. Mock object doesn't have any logic currently. I did not define any behavior. So since it is not, no logic is there, this list is an empty list. And thereby it returns an empty list. And when I print back the size, it is giving 0. For mock object, there is no behavior. Now I can define the mock object behavior. How I will define? Now see, this is your mock object. For mock object behavior, how I will define? I'll define in the test class only. How? See here. I'll define like this. When student DAO, when student DAO dot get all students. Okay. Then see here, I'll define the list. List of student. I'll create one student here. Student is equal to new student. Student dot set first name F1. Student dot set last name, say something L1. Student dot set email abc@test.com. These are all test data actually. Okay. Next is student dot set student ID. I will say S1, something like this. Okay. Or okay, this is an integer, right? I'll take 100, something like this. Now you see when student or get student, then dot, then return. Okay, I have to add this in the list. List of students is equal to, or student list is equal to. I have to define the behavior. New array list student. Now student list dot add of student, and here I'll return student list. Now see, when now I'm defining the behavior for this. This is a mock object. Now when I run this, you see, I'll get size as 1. I'll get student dot size as 1. Because what I'm doing here, you see here, what I'm doing here. Now I have like this. Okay. Let me Let me define here. I'll define. Now you see. Now here I'm defining the behavior. Here I'm defining the behavior for the DAO class. What is the behavior? When student DAO.getAll student is called, I have to return the list of students. And here I'm creating the test data for the students. Because your mock object will not connect with the database. We have to define this. Now you see, now when student service, this is your actual method. This is your actual method. When student service.getAll students is called, now this is the real method. This method is called. Now here if you see, here it is calling student DAO.getAll. This is your mock object. So this mock object, now I define the behavior now. I define the behavior. What is the behavior? When student DAO.getAll students is called, I'm returning the student list. This is the behavior. That means now this students list will be your test data, which I'm returning. So student.size is how many elements are there in the students in this list? Only one student object. So size is 1. Only one student object is there, right? I have set the properties and add that in the list. In the list, I have only one student object. So what I'm doing here, I'm defining the behavior for the mock object. I'm defining the behavior for the mock object. Behavior for mock object. Mock object. Next, call the real service, call the real method of the service class, service object. Call the real method of service object. Service object. Now when service object internally calls, service object is taking now, your service object is taking the mock DAO object. So this is your mock object is your DAO. Your mock object is DAO object. Your mock object is a DAO object. Now your service is taking the DAO object internally. And when service is calling the DAO object, but this is the mock object. So this logic gets executed. This logic gets executed. That means this logic gets executed. This logic. And thereby your service class will get this logic. And when you print this, the size will be 1. Why 1? Because I'm adding one student element. So when the service object is calling the mock object, this behavior is called actually. This behavior is called. Okay. So this is how this will work actually. So whenever service class calls the mock object DAO class, internally that behavior is called and that logic gets executed, and that will be the result. That will be the result of your mock object. So this will come with practice only. You have to practice. But you have to remember the things like your service class will be your real object, your DAO class is mock object, and you have to define the behavior of mock object and call the real object service. Okay. So you have to remember that. So here what we are doing here, we are defining the behavior of mock object. Mock object, then calling the method of real object. So when real object method calls mock object method, so it will internally call the behavior of the mock object. Behavior of mock object. Mock object method. Now you see, if you just correlate this, 1, 2. That's all. Now, what is a mock object here? DAO. DAO object. Get all to DAO object method. And what is your real object method? Your service object method. Okay, if you see here, this is your mock object, and this is the behavior. Now you see here. Now, okay, I have to do one more thing. Instead of system.out.print, what I'll do, I'll have to just say the expected result and actual result. Assert equals what is your expected result? Your expected result say, so your expected result is, I'm expecting one student to get, okay, just think. So expected result is 1, comma, your actual result will be this one, students dot size. That's all. So when I run this test case, see, you are able to pass. The test case is passed. So this is how this will work. Okay. Similarly, we can see for others also. Everyone understood, right? Everyone clear? You have to follow this, that's all. So why this process means? Because we have to follow the test case principles. So because, see, as I told you, before writing the actual code, sometimes we start writing the test cases to see whether the requirement we understood or not, whether the requirement is properly matching with the logic that we write. So that is the reason we start writing these test cases. And these test cases are very important to write actually. And you might, and why for student service? Why for student service? This is a real object, and why this is mock object? You have to tell. This will be interacting with the database. So any component that is interacting directly with the database, create mock objects. Any components that are not interacting directly with the database, create the real objects. That's all. So if you see in this diagram, your service class is not directly interacting with the database, but your DAO class is interacting with the database. Similarly, we can write, we saw this method, right? Till now, get all students, but we can go for create student. We can write create student, get student by ID. Tomorrow I'll do this, okay? Tomorrow I'll start doing this. Or let me, yeah, tomorrow I'll start this. But you understood right now how we can write the test case? The same way it will be there for these two methods also, create student and get student by ID, same way. So with that, tomorrow we can complete JUnit and Mockito. So then from the next tool is, so by tomorrow we can complete JUnit and Mockito. So day after tomorrow I'll start Maven, SLF4J. So I'll start these tools. Sonar Cube. I shared actually the Google Classroom link, right? I shared so many times actually. 1 minute. Huh? I'm just sharing again, 1 minute. This is the Google Classroom. Everyone clear with today's concept? Whatever I have dealt. Okay, good then. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Most of the people understood. Yeah, good. I don't have recording classes. I don't have recording classes. All right then. All right then. Yeah. I shared it, right? Google Classroom link already I shared in the chat. See, take this. I'm sharing in the chat. See this. See the chat. I don't know why you are asking again and again. I chatted in the Google Classroom link in the chat just now. Again, I'm sharing. Just now I'm sharing. Okay, I'll upload all these running notes. See, till last week I have uploaded all the notes and all that. Okay, I'll upload again all this. All right then. Huh? Thank you all. I shared in the chat. I shared it in the chat actually. Okay, let me share here. Let me share here. Yeah, I shared here. Are you getting now? Copy this. All right then. Thank you all. See you tomorrow. Okay then. Thank you all. Yeah, thank you everyone. Yeah, thank you.